Some people leave without a warning. I left without a sound. They said I was stubborn. Maybe I was. But not the way they meant it. I didn't push people away because I wanted to be alone. I just got used to not being wanted. My name is Ethan Ward, and I've mastered the art of silent exits. I don't slam doors. I don't shout or cry. I just vanish because the moment I speak, it feels like no one listens anyway. I wasn't always like this. I grew up in a house where emotions were like broken furniture, present, but never acknowledged. My father, Richard Ward, believed real men didn't talk about feelings. My mother, Karen, saw vulnerability as a burden, something you hid to keep things from falling apart. My sister, Emily, was the family's favorite distraction, loud, bright, the kind you photograph for picture frames. I was the quiet background, always just out of focus, but that silence I wrapped around myself, it wasn't rebellion. It was survival. Now 27, I live in a small apartment in a city that doesn't ask questions. I go to work. I come home. I eat dinner alone. I sleep. Repeat. No one notices if I miss a day. Or two. Or three. And then came Maya Blake. I met her exactly the way people meet in stories. By accident, but it felt inevitable. It was a Thursday evening in early autumn, the kind of cold that seeps into your skin before you realize you're shivering. I had just left a meeting that I barely spoke in, trying to outrun the weight in my chest. I found myself walking to the old park near the river, my usual escape route, and there she was sitting on the one bench no one ever sits on. A woman in her late 20s, dark brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, a long maroon scarf wrapped around her neck like she was hiding from the world. She looked like someone waiting for something she didn't believe would come. We didn't speak that day. Just a glance. But something about her silence felt like mine. The next day, she was there again. And so was I, again, no words, just two people sharing the same silence like a blanket. And that became our ritual. Eventually, we talked. It started with a question. Do you come here to thank or to forget? She asked without looking at me. I don't remember what I answered. I just remember how her voice felt calm, honest, and familiar in a way that unsettled me. She told me her name was Maya, that she used to teach literature but took time off after her mother died. That she was tired of pretending to be okay for people who didn't really care. I didn't tell her much at first. Just that I worked in tech. That I preferred autumn over summer. That I liked coffee but never finished a full cup. She didn't push. That was the strange part. She didn't ask me to explain why I went quiet sometimes, or why I looked away when she asked something too personal. She just let me be. And yet her presence was louder than any noise I'd ever known. I didn't understand it at first. How someone could make silence feel so safe. One evening I asked her, "Why do you always sit here?" She smiled faintly, brushing hair out of her eyes. "Because people don't wait on this bench. And I like to prove the world wrong." That night stayed with me. So did she. Days passed. The cold deepened, leaves fell, and my routine slowly shifted. I started waiting for 5:30 p.m. not to clock out of work, but to go see her. I started looking forward to someone simply noticing I existed. To hearing her thoughts about books she used to love. To feeling like maybe I wasn't completely invisible, but I didn't know how to say it. How to tell her she was the only person who ever made me feel seen. And just when I thought I had time to figure it out, she stopped coming. No warning, no message, no goodbye. It's been 5 days now, 5 days of sitting on the same bench, pretending the wind doesn't sting more than usual. 5 days of scanning the path every few minutes, hoping she'd turn the corner with her scarf trailing behind her. I'm not stubborn, I'm just lonely again. And I don't know if I'll survive the silence this time. The 6th day without her was colder than the rest, not because of the wind, but because of the weight in my chest. I told myself she was probably busy, or sick, or maybe just needed time. But deep down, I knew that was just my old habit, finding excuses for people who leave without explanation. And yet with Maya, it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like interruption. That evening, I sat on our usual bench, staring at the river. The trees had shed their last leaves, and the world looked stripped down to its bones, raw and exposed. Just like I felt. That's when I saw it. Folded between the bench slats, half tucked into the wood, was a small piece of paper. Old, creased, and soft like it had been handled too much. I don't know how I missed it all these days. My hands trembled as I pulled it free, terrified it would. Say everything I was afraid to know. It was a note. Written in her handwriting. I would know it anywhere. Ethan, I didn't plan to disappear. I just didn't know how to say goodbye. You make it harder to leave. You make silence bearable. And that's dangerous for someone like me. I've spent my whole life preparing to be alone. I didn't expect you. I'm sorry. Maya, that was it. No return address. No date. Just a confession hidden in almost whispers. I stared at her words until they blurred into the bench. She hadn't left because she didn't care. She left because she cared too much. And maybe she didn't trust herself with that kind. A feeling, neither did I. Flashback. 1 year ago I hadn't thought about my past in a long time. Not clearly anyway. But finding that note cracked something open. A year ago I had been engaged. Her name was Claire. She was smart, poised, and everything my parents approved of. I thought I loved her until the night I told her I was struggling. That the silence in my chest was turning into something darker. That I didn't know how to feel joy anymore. She looked at me, confused, then cold. Ethan, don't make everything so dramatic. Just get over it, she said. I never brought it up again. Not to her. Not to anyone. 3 weeks later, she left. No real explanation, just a text. This isn't working. Good luck. After that, I stopped trying. Until Maya. And now she was gone too. Back in the present, I sat on the bench long after the sun had disappeared. My fingers traced the lines of Maya's letter over and over. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was just tired. But then I started to wonder what made her think she had to leave at all. What was she running from? I remembered something. She had once said, almost jokingly, while watching the river move, "You ever feel like people only notice you when you vanish?" I hadn't thought much of it at the time. But now it hit differently. Maya didn't just disappear from me. She had a pattern of disappearing from people, from places, from pain. Something had taught her that leaving was safer than staying, and maybe something had taught me the same. Too. Days later I couldn't sit and wait anymore. That's not who Maya made me. She made me curious, braver, awake. So I did something reckless. I went to the bookstore she mentioned once. The one her mom used to take her to as a child. Hollow Pages, tucked between a laundromat and an old bakery downtown. I walked in, heart pounding, and there she was, behind the counter. Sorting books. Headphones in. Same maroon scarf wrapped around her neck. I stood there for a second, unsure if I should speak. But she looked up and froze. Her lips parted slightly, her hands stopped moving. There was no smile, no apology, just surprise. And something else. Guilt, and maybe hope? "You found the note?" she whispered. I nodded. "I did. And I found you." Then came the silence. The kind you could fall into or run from. And I didn't know yet which one she'd choose. Silence stretched between. U.S., thick and fragile. Maya's eyes hadn't moved since she saw me standing at the edge of the bookstore counter. There was no warm reunion, no cinematic rush into each other's arms. Just this quiet tension, like neither of us knew if we were supposed to stay or run again. "I didn't think you'd look for me," she said, finally. "You left a note." I replied, "You knew I would." She looked down at her hands, the ones still nervously rearranging the stack of books she didn't need to touch. Her voice was steady, but something behind it was shaking. "I shouldn't have left it." I wasn't thinking straight. "You were," I said. "You just didn't want to deal with what it meant." That landed. She exhaled, eyes flickering toward the window like she wished the autumn rain would wash this moment away. I stepped closer, slow, careful. "I'm not here to demand anything. Maya, I just want to understand. You don't owe me your whole life. But you owe yourself a chance to stop running." She finally looked at me, and this time, she didn't look away. We sat across from each other in the small break room behind the bookstore. A single yellow light buzzed overhead. She poured us tea in mismatched mugs. "We didn't touch it. When my mother died," she began, "I stopped believing in lasting things. She was my anchor. The one person who made me feel like I wasn't too much, or too quiet, or too different." I listened. Quietly. Fully. After she passed, my dad remarried within 6 months. My stepmother was kind on the surface. But I always felt like furniture in my own house. I disappeared. Just like you did. Her voice cracked just slightly. "So, I made a rule, never get too close, never depend, never need." Because when you need people, they leave. I nodded. It felt like she had spoken the same blueprint I'd lived by. But you, she hesitated. You made it harder. Because I saw the same hurt in you. And I thought if I stayed, maybe we'd both start believing in something again. And that scared me more than being alone ever did. The room felt impossibly small. I wanted to reach for her hand. But I didn't, because this wasn't about me being brave. This was